Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Triple Tap. We are now up to episode number 32 now. Time is certainly going by very fast. So good evening and welcome to Kim and Lance. Thank you for joining me with me. How are you both this evening? And how's your week been? We'll start with ladies first. Kim.
Thanks, Ainsley. Hi, everybody. Yeah, good week. I've got a bit of a heartwarming and heartbreaking story tonight. It's come to our attention of one of our Westminster aged care home here is in having some awful things happening there. It is elder abuse at its highest. Things like the Mackay community has really come together and they're now feeding these people. Some of the residents are sleeping on their mattresses in the floor. The mattresses are absolutely disgusting and need replacing. There's no security, there's no lighting. No emergency phone if any of them have any health emergencies. Many are not got hot water, air cons in the heat up here. Most of them are not working. And the residents have been threatened if they speak out. So there's quite a few in the community that have gotten together, and this is the most incredible part of it. So they've been getting donations in and feeding these people, of which the manager is trying to stop. And they are now trying to raise $750,000 to actually take over the management lease, the kitchen and the common room for these people and put community in there to actually run it. Everything needs upgrading. So it's just another demonstration of how a community can work together. And I do want to say, watch this space in the next couple of days. We are going to put a post out there. We're going to try and raise as much money as we can for them, share it far and wide when it comes out, please. So heartbreaking, but also heartwarming.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Well done. Good job. What about you, Lance? What kind of a week have you had?
Well, I always have an awesome week. So, but it is sad to hear that story in Mackay, what's happening. So, Kim, do you need any help up there?
Quite possibly. We just had our first chat with them today, so we're still in the process of. We've got a plan of action going forward now with them, which is great. But you know, any help we're always grateful for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's very sad to hear. So hopefully we can get a good outcome there.
Yeah, hope so.
Excellent. All right. Well, I shall get on. We'll introduce our guest speaker for this evening. It seems like councils are doing all sorts of funny things around the countryside. So I'll get on and introduce this lovely lady. Her name is Elizabeth Case. She lives in central Queensland with her husband, 2 children and a few pets, a couple of dogs, chickens, ducks. She is an advocate for bringing everything back to local, rebuilding communities to provide locally grown organic food, a return to natural health practices and a life of truth and justice, where everyone has a purpose and the right to self-determination. Liz has been very blessed to have experienced working with the Yolngu in the northeast Arnhem Land, hopefully I pronounced that right, and have the privilege to have been adopted into the Yolngu tribe and clan group. The Yolngu are a beautiful people with a very strong culture. And Liz hopes in the future that self-determination is returned to the original people and that we can work and learn together. And we already see evidence of that with what we're doing with the sovereign nation people and helping and working together with them. In 2020, Liz ran as a Queensland state candidate. Her aim was to have a platform where she could engage the community regarding the importance of informed consent and the benefit of a clean environment for better health outcomes. Liz ran as a candidate to give people in her electorate a voice where previously there were none. After her experience running for politics, she started looking into the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution and began to understand the difference between who was governing us and who was supposed to be representing us. Liz is a true visionary and creator of the new earth. She can see a future where we are all free of the debt slave system here that no longer serves us. And together, people from all walks of life return to being the custodians of the land. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please let's welcome Liz Case to the call. Liz, if you're there, if you can turn your camera on and join the conversation. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Now, Liz, I hear you've got a really interesting story to share with us this evening that started off as something quite simple to do with your lovely dog. We showcased him in the promo, and he's a gorgeous looking dog. And you're going to share with us what on earth has gone wrong with the council.
Yeah, thanks, Ainsley. Oh, it's quite an incredible story, really. It's sort of gone from having a bit of a pushback, I suppose, in the fact that we feel that we're over-regulated, overcharged for everything, and it sounds, it's very a sort of simple fact of the fact that it was a dog registration, and it sounds quite trivial, but ultimately it was crossing that line in the fact that I went to pay the dog rego thinking it was about $35, and then realized, well, you get penalized if you don't do what council want you to do. So our dog, he's an entire male, and we made that choice for health reasons, and we get penalised for that. So when you're looking at nearly $100 a year to pay to have a dog on your own property, I wasn't really very happy about that. So it was a bit of started off as a dispute over the reason why we need to pay that sort of money, the reason why we need to pay that money at all. And then it turned into 3 council officers with 2 police climbing a locked gate and coming onto the property to take the dog, to seize the dog. So in the confusion, because obviously I didn't know that these people were on my property until they were sort of halfway down, I was in shock. I was in sort of fight and flight mode. There was sort of questions raised, and I ended up getting arrested for assault for trying to read the council officer's identification tag. So it started, it was just incredible. Like I just couldn't believe it. I thought it was some sort of joke. It kind of went from that situation to me then going through the courts. The charge was uplifted to serious assault of a public officer performing a function. And what's kind of driven me to speak out was when I received this sort of brief of evidence, the council officer accused myself and my husband of being sovereign citizens. So at the time, we didn't really understand what this was. When I went into court to defend myself against a charge of common assault, I was told by the prosecutor that they'd uplifted that to better reflect the fact that it was a public officer on a duty, performing a duty. At the same time, I was given documents which were supposed to be case law that said, well, you've got sovereign citizen beliefs. We've looked at the video. You've got sovereign citizen beliefs, and we think that's a reflection of what happened. So I did question, and I said, well, can you tell me what a sovereign citizen is? The prosecutor couldn't tell me and said it was a generic term. Again, I questioned, and I said, well, I don't understand. Is it factual? Is it a propaganda term? Is it factual? I don't understand what that is. Well, it's, anybody that's got ideals about what law it applies and what law doesn't apply. So anyway, we went in. This happened before I went into the courtroom to supposedly defend against a common assault charge. I asked the magistrate then, because I was sort of, I was all over the place. I didn't understand what was happening. I asked the magistrate to explain to me what the difference was. So she said, well, this new charge, it's got a maximum term of 7 years. And she said, but don't worry, you probably won't go to jail. You'll probably just get community service. So I went away and I said, well, I need some time because I'm not in a position to defend myself against this charge. And I went away then, and then I engaged a law firm to try and help me sift through what was going on. So it's been a long journey. It's been dragged out. I've now got another legal team that are helping me with it. It turns out that that particular charge, under the criminal code, they've actually removed your right to a jury. So the fact that it's an indictable offence, it's over 12 months, I should have the right to have a jury trial. But that's been removed on that particular charge. So I've spent the last 12 months reading legislation, which is quite ironic, because what's happening now, this sovereign citizen thing that people are being labelled with, that it's about not recognising the law. I've gone back and I've read the legislation, and there's a lot of holes in what's going on. It's not stacking up. So and I feel in quite a vulnerable position now because of this media campaign. They are labelling people that are reading, trying to educate themselves on what the law is supposed to be and asking questions. So it's been a big journey, and it's not over yet. It's not by a long shot.
Liz, can I ask you a question? Did they suspect you of being in the process of committing a crime when they entered your property unlawfully?
Did they think I'd committed a crime?
Were you
No,
in the
it was
progress of committing a crime?
It was due to non-compliance.
So did they serve a search warrant?
They gave me a document which they're claiming is a warrant, but I don't believe it's a warrant.
So they often fail on technicality because these people are normally inherently lazy, and they bluff their way through. So when you look at their actions, have you got their videotape of the incident?
Yes, yeah.
And what does the assault look like on videotape?
Well, the initial arrest was me trying to read an ID tag, because none of them formally identified themselves. So I didn't touch any body. I flicked a plastic tag, and that's what I was arrested for. But what they did is they'd gone back, and initially I had defended myself in the fact I told the officer to leave the property, and I asked the police officer to remove the authorized person from the property, and they didn't do it. They've got a warrant, they're here for the dog, and that was the end of it. So this officer, the council officer, carried on walking towards me and where my children were, and I put my hands up to stop him, and he kept walking. And there's a 3-second video that shows physical contact between myself and him. And at that point, it was very theatrical. So this man, like, I'm 5 foot and 40 kilos, and this man was a big guy, and he threw his arms in the air and he said, "Get your hands off me, get your hands off me." And it's alleged that I've pushed him. Everyone's claiming that I've pushed this man. Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's not physically possible for me to be able to do that. So that was a warning, don't touch him, you'll be arrested. So they've completely changed the circumstances of what I'm being charged with. And they're now saying that physical contact for that 3 seconds is a serious assault. And that's what they're alleging I have done. So it was a complete change to what actually happened on the property. So the charge is completely different.
Yeah. They've probably entered the property without a valid warrant. You've done the right thing, gone and engaged a member of the bar. Do you realise that they're all members of the bar, the solicitors, the magistrates, the judges?
Well, yes, I am aware of that. But the issue that I have is this is turning into something completely different.
Hmm.
So I did enter to represent. I probably spent, well, what would it have been, 6 months or more going into the courts on my own. I don't really know what's going on inside a courtroom. So for me to represent myself, I was there to a point, but then this is a serious charge that nobody really seems to be taking seriously. This is what's quite amazing with my experience going through the courts. Whether they just have people, they must be used to this. Obviously they are used to this, people coming through. I'm not used to this. I've never had any dealings with the police before, never been in a courtroom before. So for me, this is not normal, whereas for these people it is normal. So a serious charge that has got a 7-year maximum term on it, and they've removed it on that particular section, they've removed the right to a jury. So I don't get to be tried by a group of my peers. So the whole thing is really stacked against me.
So they've literally, sorry, Lance, they've literally manipulated everything. They manipulated and forced entry into your property. They've manipulated the warrant. They've manipulated the charges. They've manipulated the law. And they've literally manipulated you into having to seek legal advice or legal representation from a part of the organisation that they are all one of. In essence, that's what's happened.
Yeah.
Well,
so
allegedly.
So
I can't make any claims because this has got to
No.
go into a courtroom. So I've got to be very mindful of that.
Sure,
Yes.
sure. So their intention is pretty clear in this. I can say that their intention is to make an example out of anyone trying to defy the council. Now, are you aware that councils in Australia are not recognised under the Constitution?
I am, yes, because I have actually, well, after I stood in the state election, I then went and started looking at the Constitution. Yeah, so this is kind of where my knowledge has stemmed from, because experiencing the political realm and how like minor independents and minor parties really struggle, because for one thing, they just don't have the money. But when I stood, I was self-funded. And then ultimately, generally, the public are quite lazy. So, the major parties, they just hand their how to vote cards and everyone just goes, oh, thanks very much. And they walk in and they do as they're told. And it's soul destroying for somebody that's got an electorate that's like hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, that I was driving every day to try and connect with people. And then you come back and on polling day, people just go in and they just do what they're told. There's not, there is a contingency there that want to vote differently. I'm not disputing that. But generally it was quite, I suppose it's a bit of a wake-up call, really. I stepped into this arena to try and make a difference and have a voice, but then I was like, well, hold on a minute, I've got to go back and I've got to start educating myself about what's behind everything. And I did start looking into the Constitution and the powers or the authority that's supposed to come from that.
Yeah, so tell us where this story began, because it didn't begin with council officers and police jumping the fence. What was the first contact with the council?
As far as this situation, well, they'd sent, like I said, I went to register the dog, and then it was too much. It was the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, really, that I don't think $100 is reasonable. So we didn't pay. So it was I suppose it's like, it's one of those civil disobedience situations, isn't it, where you don't comply.
So then the council issued an infringement notice?
Yes, they did, yeah.
And how did you respond to that?
We wrote to them, and because they wrote to us with the number of threats. We saw it as threats. We will do that. You don't do as you're told, we'll do this and we'll do that. So we wrote back and said, well, can you provide us with the evidence that you can do what you say you're doing?
And did they respond?
And that didn't come. No, they didn't respond.
Right. Okay.
And in the end, they climbed the fence.
How much land are you on?
5 acres.
5 acres. Do you have any stock?
Oh, we have chickens. Like we don't have sheep or anything like that. We have fowl.
Yeah. So it could be considered a protection animal for the chickens, a bona fide working dog.
Yeah, well, he's a guardian animal, but you have to be registered as a primary producer before you'll get any waiver on your dog rego.
Right. Because I know there's no requirement to register bona fide working dogs. So how do you qualify to be a primary producer?
Well, you've got to actually be commercial, I believe. You've got to have a commercial operation coming out off your property. That's how it works.
Yeah. And you haven't thought to joinder with a commercial producer?
No, not at the moment. No.
Right. Okay.
We wanted to do permaculture. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This was my plan a couple of years ago, to turn this property into a permaculture farm, to have organic food to provide to the community.
Yeah.
But it just hasn't turned out like that.
Yeah. So there's always loopholes in the law, and there's always clever ways to get around them. Now, your solicitor, I'm not going to call him a scumbag, and I probably think he's a scumbag, but I'll keep that thought and say that his job is to milk your bank account till it's empty. That's his job. He takes an oath to the bar, not to the client. So he has no interest in your outcome. He has an interest in keeping his mates happy, because that's who he's sworn his oath to, and an interest to buy a new BMW. That's where his interest lies. So you rarely get good results from your average lawyer solicitor. That's a fact of life.
And I've experienced that, but I don't think this team are average, put it that way.
Would you look at alternatives in the meantime before the trial?
Well, yeah, potentially.
Because there's lots of ways to beat these people.
The thing that's obviously hanging over everything now is what this potentially could be turned into with what we're seeing coming out of the media at the moment. And I'm sure I'm not the only person. Like, I'm hearing other stories of people being accused of being sovereign citizens.
Well, that's an oxymoron.
We know that. Yeah, I was going to say that. Well, we know it's an oxymoron. It's a term that's been created to serve a purpose. And ultimately, anybody really that's on the front line, that's speaking out and trying to make others aware of what we're facing, they've got so many boxes at the moment that they're ticking. And anybody that actually is questioning where this line of authority is coming from, it's a modern day witch hunt, really.
I think
absolutely.
You're right. I think people are like you, Liz, are probably at this very point in time feeling like they're in a rock and a hard place. Everybody wants a solution. We know that the judiciary, the government, everyone is completely lawless right now. They're barely even keeping within the bounds of their legal system, let alone using law. So for people in your position, it's a real transition, tough period, because there's nothing that's really working when you go down these avenues. And there's a lot of people out there who are in this position and experiencing the same thing. When do you go to court, Liz?
It's a 2-day hearing on the 27th and 28th of February, which at the moment, well, it's in the Magistrates Court in Gladstone. So like the hardest thing is the fact that it is a very serious charge and the right to a jury has been removed.
Yeah. We had
Well,
a
look,
conversation. Oh, sorry, Lance, you go.
hindsight's 2020. I'm sure if you had your time over again, you'd do it different. So we got a lot of people watching tonight, and the real secret is don't engage in any manner physically with police in attendance. It's just the wrong thing to do, and that's you know. And I say that with complete kindness, and I understand your position. You're trying to get this person's identification. In hindsight, you probably could have said to the police officer, "I need everyone's name for contact reasons," and they would have been more than happy to oblige. But they use these situations
look, I think
to set people up.
It was the element of surprise, because I didn't even know they were on the property. And even at one point, I did say, after I'd been arrested, I said, well, why didn't you just bit the horn and I would have come out to you? And there was no response. So ultimately, I didn't know what was happening. It was really hard to process because there was 5 people on the property and they were all in different positions. So you can't really process what is actually going on. And literally, it's a responsive, because for me, it was an invasion of my privacy. It was first thing in the morning. My husband had gone to work. I was getting the kids organised for school. And then all of a sudden the dog was going nuts. And I walked out and there's these people marching down my block. It really wasn't something that I would have expected to happen under the circumstances. So it was very hard then, my brain was not working in a methodical, organized manner. It was like, what the heck is going on? You shouldn't be here, go away.
Yeah. And you had trespass signs on your property, didn't you, Liz? You had trespass signs on your gate.
Yeah, that's right. And we do that, like the gate is locked because the dog is a working dog. He's a guardian dog. So we have to meet people and bring them onto the property because he protects his flock. So he gets very stressed if he sees people that even people that we know. He has to protect his flock from them. So he's not an aggressive dog, but he will respond to an invasion, basically. So we can't just have people walking onto the block. They come on, but we have to meet them, and they come on, and he's like, it's okay, they're friends, fine. He relaxes, he goes back to doing what he's doing. And he's a Maremma sheepdog, and anybody with a Maremma would know that that's how they work, and people should not be walking onto the property unannounced. So, again, it was the sort of response was completely over the top. And then we've got this scenario now with this sovereign citizen thing that has come out of nowhere. Yet I was labelled a sovereign citizen in a witness statement back in November.
Did they take your dog away, Liz? And did you get him back?
They did take him. Yeah, we got him back as soon as we paid them all the money that they wanted. And then they released him. So, obviously it's a learning curve, and we do things differently now. And like Lance said, if this is happening, and I'm hearing of other people getting police come into the property, and, you just don't go anywhere near them. You don't go anywhere near them. Just don't approach them. They've got to identify themselves. You've got a right to ask who they are. You've got a right to ask why they're there. And even if you're not happy, you've got a right to say that you're not happy with the situation, but don't go anywhere near them.
Absolutely.
So we see this more in regional areas, this sort of behaviour. In the city, the police hang out with the police because there's plenty of police. But you get to a town like Gladstone, and you're going to find that council officer and someone in the police force up there, they're at the same lodge meeting. And so they get together and they say, listen, we need to do something here. And that's how they cook it up. and they just try and bluff you. And that's why they've elevated the charges. Now, the sovereign citizen thing, here's the concerning thing for everybody, but I don't want to drive fear. You know when something stinks when both sides of politics sing the same song. So you've got Peter Dutton singing the sovereign citizen song at the moment, and they know exactly what the words mean because these guys use this language all the time. So they understand that it's a God-given rights makes the sovereign, and a citizen is a slave of Rome. They understand this. They don't have a problem with it, right? But they use it to persecute. And that's what they're going to try and do. And they're going to try and come for everyone in the freedom movement that's not standing strong. So if someone says you're a sovereign citizen, you say to them, why would you say something so ridiculous? Would you like me to explain the two words so you know what they mean? Because you can't have God-given inalienable rights and be a sovereign if you are in fact a slave. So the two just don't go together. Take the time to explain that to them. Say, I comprehend what the words mean. So I'm going to take the time to explain it to you and deny it. You're not a sovereign citizen. So you need to make that a bold statement. They will not be able to prove the case that you're a sovereign citizen. Right. And that's the danger I think you need to avoid with your solicitor. There was no physical damage to the council officer.
Yeah, they know that. They're very aware of what the situation is. Very much so.
So
they do know what's unfolding.
They've elevated the charge so that you can get a lesser charge, but you're still going to get a charge. See, if they go for minor assault, right, the magistrate's probably likely to throw that out. But now he's got the option to back down to the lesser charge. So now it's a bit of a mess. My advice is I can hook you up with a couple of people that may be able to give you some paperwork to diffuse this situation or to change it, rather than keep paying thousands of dollars to solicitors who would just there to take your money. So it's worthwhile. How much time have you got before the hearing is?
Well, it's the end of February, so I've got a little time.
So you've got time. You've got time. And this is the time we're living in. We can't sit back anymore and take things for granted. You know, I'm 57. I've had a whole lifetime of living in Australia where we were relatively free. We've lost that. So we can't take for granted that the police are going to do the right thing. More often than not, they're not going to do the right thing. They're there to cover themselves. They're there to protect their mates. They're there to protect the institution that we call government, which is not their job. Their job is to uphold the law. But like Kim said, they're not following the law. So I think become aware of this situation, work out where you are. Don't place yourself in danger.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a huge learning curve. There's no question about that. Just experience in the court, and I've done my own investigations. I've sent freedom of information requests and trying to figure out what's behind it all. And what's difficult is, as we know, the law is muddied, and this is why people are trying to find remedy, and they're trying to ask questions, because ultimately we've got a line of authority that's going all over the place. There doesn't seem to be one direct line to we're meant to have a constitution. Like, we know that has gone out the window, but ultimately it is still there, and it's something that can be used. But ultimately the authority that's coming down, we've got power. Basically, we've got power rather than a line of authority that allows these organizations to do what they're doing, or allow these kind of government entities to do what they're doing. It's very confusing, because we have to comply with one element, but then when you look behind that, it doesn't correspond to what's going on behind the scenes. So it's very hard.
So
I'll just say it's very hard to grasp exactly a process that's meant to be followed, there seems to be a process, and then it goes out the window, and then something else comes in. So it's really difficult to actually get a proper understanding of what the law is meant to be. What are we meant to be abiding by?
Okay, so that's a very, very good statement. What is it meant to be? So what have we got in our courts? What law do we have in our courts? Ainsley, what do you reckon we've got?
Common law.
Maritime law? Admiralty
in the
law?
courts, yeah.
In the courts. So the Australian Constitution, while it exists and it's there, it's not in force. Because in 1973, Gough Whitlam registered Australia in Washington, D.C. They became a foreign corporation, foreign to Australia, right? So now they're occupying Australia, and it's a belligerent occupation by a foreign corporation. So what we call that is an undeclared war. Now, I have all week this week, last week, been reading the Libre Code, the Geneva Convention, international humanitarian laws, and the Unidroit Treaty. So when you look at how they're behaving and you're saying they're not following the law, I can tell you they're exactly following the law. Exactly. And we're trying to combat them thinking we're in a completely different universe when in fact we're not. We're under a different code. We're under the codes of war. And so when you look at that and you apply that, you're going, okay, now I see what they're doing, right? Because as soon as you go towards them, you're attacking them. You're not at peace. You haven't surrendered. So then they grab you under military law, and that's the way they're dealing with you. And that's what we're finding all over Australia. And it's been like this for a while, but they're becoming more and more bold because they're getting towards the end of their plan. So they have to get this plan across the line. They're introducing the surveillance state. They're introducing the digital currency. So they're going for a complete, absolute digital control of the people. And the only way they can do that is to put the whole of society into fear by arresting dog owners for not paying council rates. Does that make sense?
You're muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Liz, I just
Yeah,
want
it
to,
does.
we had a bit of a chat today and you raised a really interesting point with the wording in the legislation that they're bringing out at the moment. Do you want to just touch on that with the self word?
Yeah, well, I've obviously read a lot of legislation since this has happened, and what I've been noticing is a change of language. So I think it was a Property Act bill that's it might be passed now. I've looked at it, but I haven't had a chance to follow it up. But notice where, you know, I've been looking at sort of who the act actually binds, and then obviously the proclamation. And this particular bill, it said the act binds a person's self, which I thought was quite interesting. So it's trying to get that understanding of what it's now morphing into, because I really think what I've experienced, I think it's changing again. You know, we're kind of familiar, or not familiar, but we are aware of this sort of maritime law that they've been using, and I think that's actually morphing now into something different, but I can't quite put my finger on it.
And I think,
But they're just,
sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say there was another piece of legislation. I can't remember what it was because I've been reading so much stuff, but it was said this act binds everyone, and then this other one was a person's self. So it would say normally this act binds all persons, but this said person's self. So I don't understand what that is.
And you looked up self.
Well, yeah, I did look up self, and it was consciousness.
But where did you look up self?
It was, I think it was a Merriam-Webster. It wasn't Black's Law. I didn't look at law dictionaries at all. I was just looking at a general terminology of what it was, or general description of what self would actually mean. which
Yeah,
is
so-
a consciousness.
So when you use the Black's Dictionary or any good legal law dictionary, they'll have very different definitions to Oxford and Webster dictionary. And so it is important that you use the right terminology. When you're dealing with banking law and the court is a bank, and they're talking about you and your, as opposed to I and me, right? The you, your is referring to your straw man, your dead twin. This is the tricks for the banking law. I and me is talking about the living person. So have a look at the summons or whatever the paperwork you've got. It will say you did this and you did that. And so that's how you need to rebut is I, me. So it's a different language, and words are very, very important in law, extremely important. So it's worthwhile having someone that looks at it that's outside of the legal system, because acts, regulation and legislation, what are they? What are they, Ainsley?
Well, if they certainly haven't passed the proper due process of law, they haven't got proclamation certificates, then they have no valid standing.
Yep. So acts, legislation are meant to govern the government and the bureaucrats, not the people. So they've flipped that, and they're committing this masquerade, this play on us, and we're accepting it. And that's why we're in so much trouble. And most of the police aren't trained in law. Most of the police are trained in the Police Empowerment Act. So that's what's their Bible. So they don't understand law. So they don't see your trespass sign as a problem. So I think the basis of your case needs to be what they've done wrong to get to the situation where you were. And that's the point you need to go from. Not on the defense, but on the attack.
Yeah. To follow the process that they would have taken to enable them to be on the property in the first place.
Yeah.
Was it a valid warrant? Was it signed off properly?
All those things, and your solicitor won't help you with that. Because if he can get the case dismissed, he's not going to make any money, is he?
Oh, look, I do know that is the standard. But I do have confidence that this will be challenged in the right way.
You have to direct him how you want him to proceed for you.
Yeah. Oh, look, they're very aware of what the current situation is. And it's trying to see, I chose to go down the path that I did to be able to do my own research and actually get have some experience of what they're actually doing within their own system. That was like the whole point of me doing what I did on my own. I actually wanted to experience what was going on. So then I've got that element of learning that I'm able to have an understanding of actually what's happening and what's going wrong. You know, obviously I can't, I don't know everything about it, and I can't say that I can pinpoint specific issues, but it's certainly not right, that back end that we're supposed to be complying with. It doesn't fit with what's happening there. It doesn't fit with what we're meant to be doing or what we're told we're supposed to be doing. Because at the moment, it's all about compliance. It's compliance and money. It's not about law there to protect the people. So the rule of law is out the window. If you don't comply, then you get punished.
It's simply a tax. It's simply a tax. And if we let them continue down this path, we'll be paying for the possums that are roosting in the gum trees, because they'll say, well, they're on your land, so you have to pay a levy so that we can look after them. And we think today that's ridiculous. but it's not.
Well, this is the thing. It's kind of, we've got to a point now where it's just unviable, because we can't even operate, we can't really function on our own land. So we've got to a point that, and it's all, well, it's due process, and they're changing due process, and it's not questioned. So just as an example, with me going into the courts, I had a situation where I went in to collect the brief of evidence, and the prosecutor, along with another lady I found out afterwards who's a solicitor, this is when I was going through this on my own, they came out of the courtroom and they handed me the brief of evidence in the waiting room, and then said, like, the first hearing, oh, well, the hearing it'll be several months before there'll be a hearing. So I was like, okay. And I didn't need to go into the courtroom, so I left and I went home. So then this was in January, 10th of January. On the 14th of February, I get an email from the court to say that I hadn't appeared for a mention. And there was a threat there that I'd got to answer a phone from a private number, and if I didn't do that, then there would be an arrest warrant issued for me. So
unbelievable, they tricked you.
What had actually happened? Well, what I found out afterwards, because I rang the call and said, well, can you tell me what law binds me to answering a telephone? And they couldn't tell me. So what actually happened is they went back into the courtroom, they said a mention, but they never told me. So at the end of the day, they don't send you a summons. I was just waiting for a summons. That's what my perception of how things work. And there was no summons. So I had an arrest warrant, threatened of an arrest warrant out on me, because I didn't even know I was supposed to be in this mention. And they kept wanting me to answer private numbers. And I said, no, if you want to contact me, you ring me from a number from the courts. If I can't pick up the phone, then leave a message and I'll ring you back. Like, I'm not trying to evade anybody. Yeah. But the whole thing is it's just ridiculous. We've got to the point where it's ridiculous. Like, you can't even operate within the system. And it's not that I was being defiant within that system. I was trying to navigate what was going on, but the whole thing is just it's not workable anymore.
No. So how many hours has this taken up of your time?
Me, it's taken up a whole year of my life.
A year
just
of your
trying
life.
to navigate. Yeah. I just trying to find out what's going on. So, I go into the court, I don't really understand what's happening. It's quite overwhelming, because I'm normally left till the end, so I'm very tired when I go in there, and I'm trying to process what's gone on. And then I come home and I go, okay, what's been said? And then I do my research, and then I document what's happened, and then try and figure out a way to work with that. So it's been a huge, I don't know, would you call it an experience? Not an experience I really want to repeat.
If you had your time again, would you pay the $100?
Well, I hate to say it, but yeah, I would.
Right.
I hate to say it, but I would.
No.
Because I've been.
I think that's the right answer, and I'm going to say to everyone, that's the right answer, because what you've done is put yourself in harm's way to a belligerent government. Now, I'll tell you what I think the better solution is for everybody. Pay the dog registration. Form the People's Council for Gladstone, get a group of awesome people together and start to lobby the council and grow your membership until you can become the council. Life is hard, life is work. And if we're not going to take responsibility for our life, we're going to get dickheads like that loser council officer and those loser police that jumped your fence and arrested you for really doing nothing wrong. But it's up to us to be the change. So that's what I'm going to say to everybody. Look, these things can become major distractions in your life. So make it a positive benefit. That whole year, build a People's Council and go along and talk to because at the end of the day, the councils there are to do the people's will. But here's what happens, guys. No one turns up to the council meetings. So what do?
They do what they want.
They do what they want. But if you've got 200, 300, 400 awesome people turning up to every council meeting, and we saw this in Livingston Council, up at Yeppoon during COVID, the council ended up not mandating for businesses to have the COVID restrictions because the people all got together and said, we don't want it. And the council said, wow, that's half the community. And it's most of the decision makers in the community. So we're going to listen to them. This is how we've got to live our life. We've got to be active. We've got to be engaged, but be the change the council. The councils are the best thing to attack. And by attack, I mean attack the ridiculous losers that are sitting on the council boards. That's the best way to do it, because they're completely corrupt, absolutely completely corrupt. They're dealing with the developers and they're doing all sorts of shonky stuff. They're bringing in all of the UN planning acts, right? The Sustainable Planning Acts, which is all about removing the carbon. And here's the reality, guys. We're the carbon that they want to remove. So
that's right. That's exactly right.
The time is now to engage. If we had spent the last 3 years building people's councils instead of marching, we would have been way in front of this by now. But plans develop slowly. We know the right way to go forward. So what do you reckon? You reckon you give that a go, Liz?
I totally agree. Yeah, I absolutely agree. With what I've experienced, then yeah, that's what we've got to do. The people have got to stand up, because you can't, you've got to be the change. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it'll be numbers, because obviously if there's a few people that are standing up and a few people that are not happy, that's all well and good, but then they'll get picked off like I did. So ultimately people have got to come together and form their own committees and decide what they want for their community, and then go into council and say, right, we're here to work this out.
Yeah,
it's got to be the way to do it.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does.
And we need more voices. Yeah,
we do. But
we need more
working.
voices. That's the thing.
Go ahead, Kim. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, sorry. I can tell you that it does work. You know, we've started up here in Mackay, going to the councils, the corporate councils, and speaking every time they have a council meeting, and we'll continue to do that. And we continue to have 5 to 6 people. It's not a very big room up here, but we go. And it's all about, we are educating them. The ladies that have been speaking in the last couple of council meetings are seriously educating them on a number of subjects. We intend to cover quite a broad range of subjects throughout the next year. So it's not just the mayors and the CEOs and those that are hearing it, but it's the councillors who are uneducated and not really knowing what's going on. It might just take a couple of those councillors to really hear what you're saying and go and do their own research. And before you know it, you might just get a few on side who will oppose the next bill or oppose the next local law that they want to push through.
Yeah.
So it's really important.
I think that's key. I really think that with the local laws, because we have got a situation where we've got now a completely new tier of government that are actually making law and enforcing law. Now the community that is becoming so restrictive. And in our community, I know down in Agnes Water, like the rates, we've got some of the highest rates in the country. And you can't do anything really without having to pay for it. So half the time, if somebody wants to do something on their property, they can't really afford it. By the time they've gone through council, it's not financially viable. So I think with the local laws, it's going to be really important that, you know, where's the consent coming from? There's got to be an element of the consent from the community. Otherwise, it's just so a dictatorial set of law that if you don't comply, then you know, it's comply or else. Basically, it can't be like that, because then it's just tyranny in the community.
Yeah, so you only get consent of the community with the community that engage. So you want to be the community that engage. Now we've seen Darren Bergsworth in Frankston have incredible success, and nothing grows confidence like success. So they've had 3 major wins down there, and the more wins they have, the more people that go to the council meetings. because everyone wants to be on the winning side, right? Everyone wants to play for Argentina now in the Soccer World Cup. So success, that's the trick. And start with your little things and have the wins and say, look, we won that. Bang, keep going, keep going, keep going, build your numbers. You'll roll the council at an election. And during the process, you're going to get the skills, because everyone thinks of themselves, oh, I could never be a councillor or an alderman or a mayor or anything like that. Rubbish. These people are ordinary. They're average. Most of them are imbeciles, right? They just play golf at the right golf club. That's all it is. So I want to see the People's Council in Gladstone. That's what I want to see. And I want to see it built, and we're here to assist with it. And Gladstone's a wonderful community. You know, it's very working class. So people want what's right. So you'll win them over. That's the best way.
There's some really good people here that that stand up for liberty and what's right. Yeah, there's some great people in this town, in this region.
Yeah,
that want the best. Well, it's all about rebuilding community and having an element of self-determination within the community. We can't just have this element of this sort of totalitarian structure, whereas we make all the rules and you have to comply, and then if you don't, we just take your money. Well, that's not it's not practicable, and it's not working. We can't all be destitute because the council have got their agenda and they don't care about anybody else. We can't allow that to continue. It's got to be the community matter, and we can work together if we get a structure that's going to work. And we need to be heard. That's the biggest thing.
Absolutely. We can build any structure we want. It's up to the people. So, you know, like I always say to myself, if there's a problem, it's normally in the mirror. It's what I'm doing wrong is what's disappointing me in my life. So be the change, guys, and shoulder that responsibility and get ready to step up.
You know, I think we really need to get creative with how to bring people on board with this in the first instance as well. You know, if people come up with ideas, and it doesn't matter if it's a silly idea, put it out there, because, you know, the freedom community is tired. It really is, because every avenue you go down doesn't seem to work. So if there are different ideas of getting people involved or hitting the nail in a certain demographic, or being able to maybe educate at schools, or, you know, things like this, then put the ideas out there so that we can at least try them. If we don't try, then we'll go nowhere.
It's tiring, isn't it? Because, you know, we've been doing this for 3 years now. It's quite exhausting.
Yeah. It's tired because it's a negative, right?
Yes, that's right.
Even if you clear your name, there's no compensation. So that's my advice. Turn this into a positive experience. Get through this and go and change the world in Gladstone. Yeah, that's
sounds like a plan, Lance. You're going to help me.
I will, Liz. I will.
Good. That's good. Oh, look, we've got to be hopeful, because otherwise we wouldn't be doing what we're doing, and we're trying to find remedy. You know, this is what it's all about. We're trying to find a way that's going to work. But like you say, sort of going back to the drawing board, and ultimately, you know, the rallies were good. They served a purpose. They brought people together. But if everybody went home and then built their community, we'd probably be in a different situation.
Well, it's happening. It's happening. Yeah. We weren't expecting this fight, but it turned up, and it's taken us a while to get organized. And I think you've seen that metamorphosis of, you know, the guys walking around in circles. It's changed. People want actionable outcomes where they see results. And there's a couple of things that I've seen which are really, I'll be quick as I can, which are really worthwhile. And the People's Council is a brilliant initiative. The TAP satellite groups, the My Places, they're brilliant. And we've got to empower the tribes to stand up and walk side by side and set up governance under their rights, because they're still the owners of everything, guys. And I can prove that to you in international law without any problem.
I think it's also just a final point too. It's important to remember, even though we might feel like we're tired, there's a whole lot of fight left in all of us, and we have really only been going for the last 3 years hard, well, 2.5, say, after people come out of the fog of realizing what was going on, as opposed to these guys that have been at it for thousands of years. And when you look at it like that, we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I
down
feel
the
the
road.
same way, Kim.
You know?
I think the same. Yeah, exactly. Like we've had to, you know, see through the lies like immediately. We've done that instantly, because obviously we're on a different sort of plane, and then we've had to get together and try and organise ourselves and try and find remedy in a matter of years when this has been going on for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it is quite incredible what we've been doing, really. So
Excellent. Well, Liz, we want to
we're not it's not over yet. We're not it's not over
No,
yet.
it's not.
No,
Far
yeah,
from
not
it.
over. No. Well, we're out of time now, Liz. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for sharing your story. We're glad you got your dog back. You know, unfortunately, having to pay the money to get him out, but at least he's back with you now. And keep fighting the fight. Keep checking all those laws, all those charges that they're throwing at you, that they are lawful. Check them out. See if they've actually passed the right processes. Make sure that warrant, if it was not legitimate, make sure you go check that out as well. And I know there's a lot of people supporting you and behind you. If the court is not a court of your jury, they haven't closed the court, have they? You can still have a number of people come into the court with you.
I hope so. But I believe that they can close the court on the day if they choose to do that. So we'll just have to see how things unfold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, good luck with it, Liz.
Yeah.
Thank
you very
you.
much for joining us and sharing your story, and we'll get this replay out ASAP for you.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. It's important to get this out and to have people out there that will support me, because I certainly need it. And with what with what the media is trying to turn us into, it's just incredible. So, you know, we've got to speak out about this and get some perspective on actually what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, if I can put a shout out to Errol, we've got an amazing group of people in from Cairns tonight. I don't know exactly how many are there. I'm going to imagine there's a few, and we're going to cross to them and do a live Q&A for anyone who's interested. So you're all welcome to stay, and we'll see how this goes. Errol, I need to know what name you're under.
Can't see him at the moment. So we'll close off our triple tap for tonight. So we'll see you guys next time on Triple Tap next week. But we are staying on, and stay tuned. We're going to have a live Q&A with a group in Queensland. So everyone is welcome to stay on. Bit of a slightly different this week, but you are welcome to stay on and hear what the Q&A is. We're just getting Errol teed up at the moment. So.
While Errol takes his time, has he come in yet?
No, I haven't seen him. If anyone's got any questions that you want to put in the chat box or raise your hand with the emoji, then you can ask any of our panelists here any questions, just while we're waiting for Errol to join us.
So,
okay, yep.
Under the name Stallard.
Okay, cool. Here he comes. Let me just ask him to unmute. Where are you?
The only one you got.
Oh, are you there, Errol?
Yes, we're here. Can you hear us?
Yep.
Can we turn their camera on, Ainsley?
Yep.
Yeah.
They have to do that.
Go ahead.
All right, you can turn your camera on. Pretty interesting day, guys. What was that? Professor Karen Phelps has
Yep.
come out and said my husband, which is a woman, is suffering vaccine damage. Now that's a pretty big drop, because that's going to go right through the gay community. She carries a lot of credibility. That's going to wake a lot of people up. So she was a strong supporter of the vaccine. All
Okay.
right.
Hi, how you going? Welcome.
We got
We're
you
doing good up
guys
here in
in.
Cairns. So we're going pretty good up here in Cairns. Can you turn on the back light here for me, please, so we can see?
Have you got a microphone up there?
There we go. So just kind of give you an idea. We're sitting in a room right now with our Common Law Assembly, watching and listening. And as you can see,
Hey guys, how's all
Hi.
going?
Hi there.
That is a
So,
wonderful crew of people up there in Cairns. I can tell
we've got
you.
about 100 people in here listening tonight, and very interesting, enlightening conversation. My name is Austin, and you've met me before, Lance.
Yep.
Thank you for letting us join your meeting tonight. I've
Our
put forward
pleasure.
a couple of questions for you, and one of those questions was about we know that words are important in law, very important in law. There seems to be a lot of people out there on the internet these days who want to try and give you their 2 cents about what words mean and the origins of them. But is there really a reputable place we can get that kind of education for our members?
Yep, there is. Now you're talking about literally hundreds of hours of training sessions are available. Yep. And this is from a guy in America who was really right. And look, don't be concerned that America's got different laws to Australia. They've certainly got a different constitution, but not that different, except for the gun part, which is their advantage, our disadvantage. But most of the decent part of the world takes their laws from the Bible. So there's a lot of commonality in between the structure. International law is exactly what it says. It's the same all over the planet. So these laws we're talking about, laws of war, UNIDROIT Treaty, Lever Code, international humanitarian law, they're the same for everybody. So that's where the commonality comes in. So they look at what's actually factually happening. And that's where the truth lies, is in the real situation, because we can believe, and we believed here for a long time, that we had a lawfully elected government. We didn't realize for a long time, the majority didn't realize, that it was just a corporation like McDonald's, except McDonald's don't have armed militia that they call police to enforce the will. So that's a slight difference. So apart from that difference, Commonwealth of Australia government is the same as McDonald's. So would you let McDonald's tell you how to run your life? No, you wouldn't. So that's the same situation we're in. So to answer your question, now you're going to have to do some digging. Keith Hemingway, the United States of America. He runs brilliant videos, training videos, and they're all available online. And I think he's got about 240 hours of them. And some of them can be quite boring, but it's the gem. It's the gem of information that you find in there that he explains that puts the whole puzzle together.
Okay.
So that's a really good resource. One of the ones I've been working on is the Convention of the Child, right? So when you go through and read it very quickly, it says, right, a child is anybody under international law that's under 18 years of age. But then they've got this other little sneaky paragraph that says the state, right? Because we're talking about states, not state of Queensland necessarily, but any state globally, can define anybody as a child based on their level of competence. So we're decent, honest people. We're thinking, okay, if there's people who are mentally impaired, you know, then obviously they need special consideration. But no, the government can just say, right, you don't understand the law, so we're going to class you as a child and treat you as a child. And so what they're doing, all the governments of the world, under this legislation, is they're trafficking the child, which is us. So we know all the people in Australia are registered with a birth certificate that says Australia. Australia is Norfolk Island. So then they give us permission to come here and work here. That's where we're trafficked. And this is all part of the criminality of this weird system that's been built. Now, it sounds like a conspiracy theory. It's fact. It's easy to research. And so you have to get to that base level of understanding so you can look at international law and say, right, what are they doing wrong? And that's where the power comes in. So then we can find the remedy.
Right. I think our assembly, broadly speaking, is aware of what you've discussed there. We know quite a bit. We've talked just quite a bit about those topics in the past. I think there's the part where we're the gap in our learning, where we need to find out how to read those terms and understand them. Like you mentioned earlier, the difference between you and your, I and me, and understanding differences between them. Because we do have people here who are smart about using a Black's Law Dictionary versus the Merriam-Webster version. And, you know, so we have people who are studying courses on learning the differences with those languages. I guess I was just looking for extra resources from you. So I think Heath Hemingway sounds like a good one. And you have a whole assembly of people here listening to this. So we're all taking notes from you tonight.
That's a good thing.
That was Keith, by the way, not Heath. Keith.
Keith. Oh,
Keith.
thank you.
With a
Keith.
K.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
With a
what
K.
I'll do is I'll put a link up tomorrow on our page so everybody can grab that from the Australia Project Telegram page.
Very good. Thank you.
And I'll send it to Errol as well so he can shoot it around through the group. So everyone
Yeah, we'll
can
put
get
it on
the
our
link.
common law page.
Yeah, because you're not going to find it in Google search, because Keith really specializes in international law and the construction of PMAs, right? Now, he's got a great mind and he comprehends very well the situation. So when you hear stuff like we're taking everything back to 1776, 1776 was not just the Declaration of Independence, right? Pre-1776 was probably when people enjoyed more freedom in the United States, because they didn't have this construction of the Constitution and this Bill of Rights. Well, it wasn't the Bill of Rights, it was the Declaration of Independence that was put together by 51 Masons. So yeah, so 1776 was also the exact same year that Captain Cook put his flag on Norfolk Island.
Norfolk Island, Christmas Island, and the Cocos Keeling Islands.
So a lot of people don't realize that. So it was a significant change in the history of the world, what they were trying to do. And it was an absolute planned strategy, absolutely planned.
Got some questions coming in, so if you don't mind, I'll just read them out to you, hey?
Yep.
Next question I have is relation to the Hague 4 War on Land, this being our peace treaty. Can you fill in any gaps with that as in relation to how we use it here in Australia?
So who has signed the peace treaty Who was a member to that peace treaty? Have you guys signed it on behalf of the Cairns Common Law Group?
No.
No. The government of Australia signed it.
Right.
That doesn't protect us, guys. That protects them because they're in a private members association called Parliament. So that's who signed it. We need to sign a peace treaty. We need to declare peace. So again, there's one that's just happened for the Githibal-Naraqbal tribe. So we can again give you a full copy of that peace treaty that we've put together.
Okay.
It's important to declare peace because until you declare peace, your enemy combatants. And what can they do to enemy combatants in a war zone?
So should that be on an individual basis or a group basis, Lance, for example, common law groups, or do we need to individually do that?
No. Perfect for a common law group. You need to have your society. You need to have your body politic put together. So PMA is the right way for the Cairns group to proceed for a peace declaration. So what do you do with the peace declaration? You gazette it, and there's a free gazette page in Canberra that's electronic. You send it to your local police stations. You send it to your local politicians, the Premier of the state which you live in, and the federal government, Attorney Generals, and tell them we're declaring peace. We are the PMA of the Cairns Common Law Group, and we're declaring peace. Very, very important, because as soon as you sign that peace treaty and you don't take up arms against the government, you're protected under Geneva Convention and under the international humanitarian law, right? So all of a sudden, these scumbags that are attacking you, they have to house you, feed you, clothe you, and give you services, electricity, water, sewage. That's the law. That's the international law. Now, this is being enforced in little bits and pieces across Australia right now. We've got an awesome First Nations lady, and she's writing letters and she's getting people out of prison and she's stopping court cases. And the enemy know this. So when the police get it, they're like, get her out of prison, get her into a house, get her looked after. Even if she recommits, just look after her and keep her out of prison, because they're committing war crimes. Now, what are some of the punishments for war crimes? Firing squad, hanging.
Yeah, definitely.
These are serious crimes. And this is what the Hague set up to administer. That's what they're waiting for. They're waiting for us to stand up, understand the law, and start applying it in our general life. And until we do, this belligerent government's just going to keep on attacking.
Very good. That's good insight. Next question I have is in reference to your suggestion about starting a people's assembly to, I guess, confront the council.
They're called people's councils, not people's assembly. They're very different. So it's the people's council.
Mm-hmm.
And you're forming your own council.
Formal body that needs to be assembled, or is that just a
no, it's just a group of people that has a Bessemer, I think they call it, not a mayor. That's another term.
Burgess?
Burgess, that's it. A Burgess, a treasurer, and obviously you want someone to take the minutes of the meeting and hold people accountable. And you guys.
And a legal team.
Oh, and your legal team, yeah, litigation, yep.
But we've already got your litigation.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's done. So you need a mayor and a secretary.
Okay. All right.
And then you turn up at your council meetings and you hold them accountable for the things that they're doing that they're not doing. And you find out what people want in the community and you start doing the will of the people.
Absolutely. And what powers do you have? You have more powers because you're lawfully constituted. You have more powers than what the corporate council has.
So you don't need any formal agreement, Errol, but you will need to have a constitution for your council as well.
Yeah, but the whole process is set up. So there's about 4 of them running now.
Yeah.
In Australia, but it's a
Mhm.
system, and we can send you the system and say, right, here it is. It's really plug and play, but it takes active engagement.
Yep. Oh, that would,
Yeah.
we would appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have a strong-minded group up here who'd be willing. We just need a little direction.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that would be very helpful. Thank you.
When you
Yeah.
get to roughly 100 people within your People's Council, then you will be able to then appoint yourself a common law sheriff to also be part of that community. And we interviewed a few weeks ago Glenn Dreyer, who actually trains the sheriffs, the common law sheriffs. So you'd be best to get in contact with Glenn Dreyer. I think Glenn is actually even on the call tonight. I saw earlier.
Glenn's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We might just see
Yep.
Glenn. We might just get you on, Glenn. Let me just see if I can unmute you, Glenn, if you want to jump in, if you can. Let me just.
Hello,
Just turn your
G'day.
video on.
Hang on.
are you sure? I
Yeah.
wasn't prepared for a presentation.
we sort of got you on the spot there, Glenn. Do you want to, are you able to turn your camera on just if you can give some guidance in regard to once the
Yeah.
councils get to 100, we spoke to you about appointing a common law sheriff, and you train people in that area how to be sheriffs. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Ainsley. Have you got me now or not?
Yes, Glenn, we can see you
Yeah.
now.
Great. Yes, the whole idea of trying to keep it in a national training is to give a standard, because I think in Australia at present, a lot of groups have got the wrong idea about sheriffs. They think they're there to just go out, break heads, and, they're not. They're there to keep the peace, de-escalate situation and give guidance. And they're there to work in conjunction eventually with the police. So, yeah, I'm more than happy to talk with you. I'm not far away. I live down in Mackay. So if you want to contact me, certainly. I'll put a link up where you can send us an email.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks,
Awesome.
Glenn. Thanks
Awesome.
for jumping
Thanks,
in
Glenn.
and doing that. Appreciate it.
All right.
Next question. No pressure.
With the coming together of all the tribes.
Oh, Lance, I believe the last time we spoke with you, you were having discussion with all the coming together of all the tribes from around the nation.
Yeah.
Around.
Yeah.
Can you give us any kind of an update on that? Where does that sit right now?
Okay, so we wanted to have a physical meeting of the tribes, but we didn't want it to be a cost burden on the tribes or on the people of Australia. So we were hopeful to have funding. That funding we're still waiting on, and I'll be honest, that's the situation. But what's happening in the tribes? They're all coming to this new big party, which is called Return of the Crown Sovereign. And that again is in international law, well written. And it's happening, guys. Like the Udinji have created the system of government for their nation. This is spreading like a bushfire, and we're having Zoom meetings all the time with proper tribal elders all over Australia. And once they see the system and get their head around what it is, that they all want to do it. And so this is, we will come together. It's just timing now. It's just getting the right timing. And I've been so busy getting Githable Narakbal, yukum put together, getting the government formed, getting all the notices done. It's been a minefield, but thanks to the awesome work of the Yidinji, and what we've been able to do with the team that I'm with, is we've been able to break this down into a very simple process. So the new tribes coming in, once they've got their artwork, their coat of arms, their shields, their mapping done, we can put the process together to go out to the international community in a week, and probably even 2 days. And then it's a 28-day non-rebuttal period, and they're an internationally recognized nation. Then comes the process of building their government and putting everything in place. So that's how we now see all the tribes are going to come together. We had a meeting with the Thursday Islanders yesterday. Very, very good meeting. Some of those guys are in Cairns, and they know the people in the Yidinji very well.
Yep. Got questions coming in.
Lance, do you
Yeah,
have to
mate.
be an Australian citizen to be part of the council?
That's a good question. I wouldn't think so.
Because we have a lot of people up here who are German descent and other cultures, but they're not sure if they can join the council because they're not Australian citizens.
Yeah, well, Australian citizens are from Norfolk Island, Errol.
Okay,
And I
right.
think at the end of the day, you write your constitution. So if you want that open to non-Australian citizens, then you write that into your constitution, and it's the People's Council.
Yeah,
So it's what the people want.
and where we're headed, there's going to be no such thing as an Australian citizen once we get this process cleaned up and organised, because that's how they keep trapping you. You go in and you fill out your driver's license. What do they ask you straight away? Are you an Australian citizen? You've just said, yes, I am a slave of Norfolk Island being let work in Australia. That's the absolute technicality of it. You keep buying in when you get a license, when you get a Medicare card, when you get all these government services. That's what they ask you. Australian citizen? Yes. Bang, you're captured. So I'd prefer no one to be Australian citizens, to be honest. Yeah, Errol's going to show us his Yidinji license.
Down here.
Lower. Yep.
Yep. So that is that's a Yidinji driver's license. How do you go on that, mate?
How'd you get it?
How do you go on it? Have they ever pulled you over?
How are you going with
Well,
it?
I haven't been pulled up yet, so I've got to find out.
Now, you also have Yidinji number plates up there, don't you?
Yes.
How do they go on them?
Well, we haven't had the cars pulled up that have got them on, so we're waiting to see when they pull us up.
Yeah, but they should have pulled you up by now. Look, the coppers are
Well,
clued on.
they know all about us, but they've already spoke to Marrimal about it, but there's no further action on it.
So in the police QPS, they have a position called area commander, and the area commander has a special manual, and that manual deals with wartime legislation. So if you're driving on your sovereign driver's license or on a tribal driver's license, your own number plates or on tribal number plates, the police pull you up and they will say, we don't recognize that. And you say, well, I don't care what you recognize. You need to call your area commander. Now he'll come up. He won't talk to you. He'll talk to the juniors there and he'll say, look, try and get him in a contract. Tell him, yeah, but where's your Australian driver's license? Where's your Queensland driver's license? And that's when you just got to say, look, this is all I need. Right. And if you've got a problem with that, you talk to the minister and police for the tribe. And they'll tell you that that's recognized and it's internationally recognized. And so the area commander, he's smart because he doesn't want to commit war crimes. So he goes, right, let them go. They know what they're talking about. If you stuff around and flick them, right, and be abusive to them, then they will treat you poorly. So you remain courteous, you stand in your own strength, you tell them the facts, and you don't contract with them. And it's that simple. And the common law groups know how to not contract with police. So it's a very simple process. Now, there's a little trick. There's a little trick for your personal property. So say your car, because every car in Australia has got a VIN, vehicle identification number. Now, that number is given to the car manufacturer by the corporate government of Australia before the car comes into Australia. And that is already registered as their property, and they recognize that VIN number. So what you do to register all your property is you send yourself by registered post a letter. And that registered post has a code number on it. And you record that code number and you make your own ID tag and you tag your own vehicle. And that way, when they say, well, we don't recognize that, say, well, you can look it up, because all those numbers on the registered post are registered internationally with the UPU, Universal Postal Union, which is a military post. We're under military law, and it will come up for them. And they'll say, oh, yeah, okay, we see it. All right, move on. Everything's a power play, guys. Everything is power. And so either you take the power or they will take the power. And it's knowledge, and it's how you apply it, and you apply it peacefully. That's the secret to this. Understand the process. We win the day every time. Okay, these guys eat donuts, right? We're the lions, they're the gazelles.
In fact, if you get smart with that process that you just mentioned, Lance, you only ever need to send that envelope to yourself once, because then you've secured that recommended registered post number. You can then add like 001, 002, 003 on the end of it for every new piece of asset that you want to register as your own.
Correct.
So you only need to do it once.
You only do it once, and then you put a serial on the end of it to identify the individual items. So you could, in theory, even dymo label your children to prove that they're your property, and say, no, that's my kid. Look, I've got my rego number on him.
Make it permanent. Tattoo it on them. Tattoo it on their arm. Never
Yeah,
too
tattooing might be a bit cruel.
That's going too far.
Dyno label them.
Wow. Okay, so we're asking, what do you write in the letter that you send into your self-registered mail?
Happy birthday.
You don't need to write anything. You can just get the envelope and send the envelope to yourself, address it to yourself, and keep a tracking docket, because that way it comes back to you anyway.
All you want is that stamp to be cancelled. As soon as they cancel that stamp, you have sent that through the sea of space. That is protected by the Air Force, right? That is an internationally recognized legal transaction. That code is everything. So, but you could put something really beautiful inside of it if you wanted to, like Freedom Day or something like that, you know?
Love letter.
Love letter. Happy birthday. Yeah.
I'm so smart, I'm standing up for myself, finally.
That's it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Look, we've got there's a few folks still left in the room, but we'd like to know, is there a way that we can get a copy of this meeting so we can review it and discuss it later at future meetings?
Yeah, sure. Once we've closed off tonight, because it currently is being recorded, we generally put them up on the main TAP Telegram page. We also put them up on our TAP YouTube channel, and we also put them on our Australia Project website under videos. So once we finish rendering the video, it takes quite a while. They will go up hopefully by the end of the week.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
Do we have any other questions tonight? Yep, one more.
Yeah, sure.
Lance, good question.
Yes.
For you personally, you're very knowledgeable about this this stuff, a lot of aspects of it. Have you personally been targeted?
So I love it when I am targeted. And the police were here quite a while ago. 2 detectives turned up from the domestic terrorist unit to question me. And it was specifically about being a sovereign citizen. So, and I really like these guys because they perform a very important function. Now, I may joke around about their intelligence and that, and there's probably some truth in that even, but I've got a lot of respect for the effort that there's a lot of good police officers, okay? There's a lot of dickheads too that, you know, jump fence and arrest dogs. But anyway, that being said, they turned up. I explained the term sovereign citizen to them. They felt like gooses. I sat them down on the front veranda. They were there for an hour. I drilled their head full of red pills about the vaccine. And I could see them taking it on board. They were quite interested in what I knew. And then they had a tour of the garden, the veggie garden, and we showed them the animals and that sort of stuff. And they had a ball and they said, thank you very much. And we haven't been back. You've really got to come across as reasonable people. If you show them you're reasonable, you're going to bring out the best side of them. And we've all seen the crackpots, right? Who want to be aggressive and argumentative and all that. So as soon as you set the mood, they're going to respond with what they know. And they're trained to be blunt instruments. Right? They're not trained to think, they're trained to follow orders. So best off, beat them, treat them like decent people. Look, really simple laws, okay? The Bible's the best book on the planet. Follow it. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Do unto others as you would have done to you. Walk a mile with your enemy so you understand their perspective. And these are all reasonable things. Now, look, when you look at our society, we're blessed in this country with awesome people. We are the majority by a long way. We've just got to get them all believing that they can make a change. And these changes will happen. Yeah.
That's good advice.
Any more questions, guys?
We got one coming.
That's
Here we
awesome.
go.
But it's Fran, so.
Yeah, that's okay.
She's looking for the finder.
Sorry. What about?
Come on, Fran, put your face on camera.
Yeah, so the question, these are a couple of specific questions about the with Liz and the dog.
Yeah.
Weird question is, how come there was no mention of the schedule of fees discussed from the defendant to the council or court in relation to this infraction with the dog?
I suppose because that sort of schedule of fees is more along the common law route, and I don't know if Liz is a common law person. So that probably answers that. And I think there's a couple of avenues to explore at the same time. See, we're not restricted to one form of action when we're dealing with court. It's not like we've just got to follow their protocol. We can hit them with other things. So I'm working on a solution at the moment to a problem that's arisen. Now, we are dealing with the Australian court system, Supreme Court of New South Wales. That's one of our attacks. The other attack is we are coming under the tribe and the laws of war. And so we're proving our point there that that the Crown's Land Department in New South Wales is not the Crown, because they don't represent the Crown, because the Crown is gone and they can't prove. See, if you call yourself the Crown Lands Department, you must prove you represent the Crown. How are they going to do that? The only Crown in Australia is the tribes. That's the only Crown, right? They don't work for the tribes. We know that because they're going up against the tribe, and the tribe would never go against themselves. So that's the second approach. The third approach is on Wednesday last week. We had a conference call with the United Nations, and they seriously asked us, if we wanted to put troops on the ground to protect the tribe. And we said, no, we'd rather resolve it. And they said, right, we're going to rush through all your paperwork so that we say we recognise Githibel-Naraakbal as a sovereign tribal nation. And they said, and we'll tell them to back off. Yeah, so I know there's a big perception out there that the UN is a completely evil organisation. The UN's full of awesome people. Yes, they do some rotten things. And yes, there's some evil people in there, but not everyone. So you get the right people and you'll get the right outcome. So that's the three forms of attack we're using. We're not worried about the court one. We'll beat him in court. But we hit them with everything else and we distract them. And so they don't know which way. They see too much problem and they walk away from the problem. And that's the way we live our lives.
Have the tribes entered any kind of contract with the UN then?
No, we've only sent the paperwork to the UN to say we're making our claim as a tribal nation.
And it's been recognized by the UN as...
Absolutely. They went through, their lawyers went through the paperwork, and I'm not going to take no credit for that because this is Udingi paperwork repurposed for Githibel-Naraakbal. And they said, this paperwork is awesome. We can't fault it. It's going to stand up.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Just in regard to your question, in regard to the fees, in regard to Liz, she's obviously still on the call listening, and she's just written in the chat there. She actually, on top of all of that, had a threat of child services because obviously she's got children. So she was threatened by child services. So she decided to comply with the court process.
Yeah, see, child trafficking. Yeah, you're dealing with...
They use that a lot, don't they? They threaten children. It's disgusting behavior. It's, they've done that to me personally as well.
Yeah. When you see that behavior, you know you're dealing with the Masonic filth. And I've got to make that point. That's the Masons. That's their tactic.
Yeah.
Attack the family.
The arresting sergeant, she said, he said he'd call child services on her. So,
yeah.
Well, what do you do when your kids are involved? You're going to back down, aren't you?
And that's what they rely on.
Yeah.
That's what they rely on. And that's why it's important that we have the Crown Sovereigns stand up, because they can deal with that immediately, because that's a war crime.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also extortion.
Yeah.
Oh, they're breaking a lot of statute, but that's a war crime, right? Threatening to take somebody's children away to force them to do your will. That's a serious breach. But the good thing is, I know Liz will record all this. So when we get the upper hand, we can go and see that sergeant and say, hey, remember when you threatened to take those children? Well, now you've got to face a common law court that's been convened by a lawful sheriff, and you're going to be judged by 12 peers. And whatever punishment they give you, they give you. So if you get 10 years imprisonment, well, that's your fault. And then he'll cry like a baby and say, but I was doing my job. And we'll say, good, so are we. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Now I have a curveball to throw at you.
Yeah.
This is a question in relation, there's a woman named Josephine Cashman from One Voice Australia.
Yep.
has thrown it out there that she's discovered a UN land grab plot, and Hillary Clinton is involved in a global criminal conspiracy to asset strip Australia using Indigenous issues.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
familiar with any of that yet?
We're
Is there-
across all of it, but I'm just going to say, Ainsley, personally, what do you think of Josephine Cashman?
I don't know her.
Ainsley's
So-
laughing. Do you want me to answer it?
Yeah, go for
Not
it.
much.
Please.
Okay. She is a complete lunatic, right? She has accused me of being working for ASIO. And I just went, cool, I better ring him and tell him they owe me a lot of back pay, right? I'm a Mason. I am working for the UN. These are personal things she said about me personally.
Defamation.
She says the same about my brother, and she goes on with all this crazy, ridiculous narrative. Now, I'm going to give you a fact. The government's already stolen everyone's property. Okay, that's a fact. So that's already happened. It didn't need the UN to do it. The Queensland, all the state governments did it already. It's all gone. That's why Len Harris was fighting in the Cairns court to try and get opened up as to what was going on. You've got one chance of having any lawful rights over land in this country. And I'm going to tell you this, and you can check it in law. It's never been lawful to sell land in Australia, or what we call Australia. Okay, what they sell is called property, and the property is the survey plan. That's all. It's just the survey plan with the meets and bounds property description. So they tell you, yo, you're buying a property. You're buying property, right? You're not buying land. You never have bought land. So when you look at a mortgage document, bottom of the mortgage document, it's going to tell you the Crown reserves all rights. So who's the Crown? We know the Queen of England's gone. They know who the Crown is. They know the Crown is the tribe. They know the tribe has never treated or sold. So there's no purchase receipt for land in Australia. So they've never been able to deal with it. So they deal with it through a fraud of property. Now, this property fraud started in New Zealand. That's where they worked out the system, how to do it. Then they brought it here, right? Up until that, everyone had leasehold. Now, when you look around the globe, you go to countries like Singapore. You can't buy land in Singapore. It's all leasehold. Everything's leasehold. And I think that's where we'll end up here, is a proper lawful Crown lease where you have control of the land under agreement. Because I can tell you, Genesis 1:26, God gave man dominion over the earth. God owns the earth, not us, right? So he told us you can have dominion. Dominion is custodianship, right? You've got the use of it, look after it, respect it. Now, the First Nations understood that. So what they have is first in time right. And because they're the Crown, they get the right to control that. But I can tell you something, I would rather pay a reasonable Crown lease and get good roads and good rubbish collection and a water service that's not full of fluoride and chlorine and heavy metals than the government who's trying to poison us. We're going to be much better off when this whole system flips. Much, much, much better off. So if we work on the premises that we can never own land anyway, then you pay a leasehold agreement on it that's reasonable, everyone's happy. You own the assets that you put on the land, so those you control. You can control what happens on the land through your lease agreement. It's a beautiful system.
And then under equity, you can come back and correct the record in regard to your mortgage, fix all that. That's a much deeper, more in-depth process.
Well, here's the beauty of the whole system, right? Mortgages, as Ainsley can tell you, they're just dead instruments, right? They're not real. The money didn't exist. You created it, and you're paying back interest on money you created. Now, these are facts in law. And so they're just scamming you on the land component. Now, on the house you live in, you enjoy, and that sort of stuff, yeah, sure. But there's only one person who can discharge that complete mortgage, and that's the Crown, and that's in international law. And so what the Crown can say is, well, we can tell you what we think, but it's up to you to do it. I can tell you guys, that's the way we're going to achieve debt forgiveness on the planet, is by being released from our mortgages. Now, the bank can say, well, I still own the house, and say, fantastic, send a team out to demolish it, but only the part that you own, not the part that I own, right? And then I'm going to sue you for all the interests that you unlawfully charged me because you never had the money in the first place. So you're going to pay to knock the house down. You're going to get nothing for it. Not very smart business, is it? So they'll just walk away. Or you can sue them for all the interest you've paid. So I can tell you, once the Crown gets involved in this, they're going to walk away from every mortgage, especially every residential mortgage.
It's just a book entry.
I've got a good question thrown at the land.
Yes.
Can if that's the case, like with the First Nations people, can we buy the land from you, Dingy?
No, you can't buy land. I just told you that. Yeah, God gave you dominion. Don't think about God as, you don't have to think of him as a typical bloke like me sitting up in heaven having a beer, right? You can consider him however you want, but the Bible is a law book. And we all know that we have to follow the law, and it's natural law. The earth is millions of years old. But even if you only think it's 7,000 years old, we live for 100 years. We come from this earth, we go back to this earth, that we know for sure. The earth owns us. We don't own the earth. We're simply here in this meat suit for our time here. So the idea of ownership, of owning land, is incorrect anyway. What we are is custodians. And as custodians, we have a right of control. But as custodians, we also have responsibility too, to look after the environment, to leave it better than what we found it. You know, these are fundamental natural principles that we need to be following.
Did you have any more questions?
And I'm really sorry if you thought you owned your land, because I can tell you, I thought the same thing. Until I worked this out, I thought exactly the same thing. This is my land, I own it. Oh, I didn't. And it can be a hard shock for people, because there'll be people sitting in that room that don't hold a mortgage.
Yeah. Okay, got one more question coming in. One moment. Yeah, this is going to be in relation to the smart cities, specifically about the coast of down the coast of New South Wales, Newcastle down through Geelong, I think, possibly, because Cairns is actually signing up into the same similar type of thing, to be a project city, I guess a pilot city for the Smart Cities program. Familiar with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
What's the real way that we can go ahead about stop putting an end to that? Is it just going through council and addressing the council?
Well, Kim, if you'd like to talk on your experience in Mackay.
So This is being raised a couple of times at our council, and to be honest with you, because we've been earmarked for one as well, our council is in complete denial, saying that no, they have never signed up to it. We get a mention in the 2022 mayoral conference that was held in Brazil. It was on their website. I think it's still on their website unless they've taken it down. Any other papers that are written, I know that Mackay gets a mention in the whole smart city agenda. Our council has been deny mode. Every time we bring it up, and we've been brought up at council meetings, we've written letters, their responses are, no, we're not, don't know what you're talking about. So I know the last couple of council meetings, it's one of the education things that we have been doing with our council. And I mean, right down to the fact that we're saying to them, do you want you and your children, your grandchildren, etc., to live in a 15K radius with no freedom, absolute control? Did you want to not eat any meat? Do you want to not be allowed to have any dairy? Because this is where you're heading with the smart city. Most of them sat there with a stunned look on their face, because I don't think most of them even know what the ramifications of the introduction of smart cities are. So at that council level, I honestly believe that it's the education process to the councillors themselves that is going to be important. With the process to stop them from going ahead in the capacity that they want, that's going to be a unified, I think there's a two-pronged effect there. A unified effort for people actually to stand up and say no to these things that have been introduced, but to also get the tribes to stand up in their capacity as a nation, to start to exert that authority to not allow the level of control that they want to go through, because that's where the real power lies.
Yeah. So if I can also add this, understand the initiatives that they're trying to achieve from a smart city, and look at it and say, right, how can we make some of this good? And how can we get rid of and control what we don't like? And so that's where you become actively involved with your council. Now, the government idea of smart cities is all about absolute control and a surveillance state, right? Which we don't want. It's communism. It's complete, utter totalitarianism. They want to control every aspect of your life. And that's the way we're heading. So the best way to do it is to understand their objectives. Now, they're going to have surveillance cameras everywhere. Now we all go, right, that's a complete invasion of our privacy. But if those surveillance cameras were only ever used for lawful purposes under warrant through a local sheriff that you knew and trusted, and it helped solve crime, that's how you could use that as a tool for good. But if they're going to monitor citizens' movements so they control what they buy, eat, think, shop, drive, all that sort of stuff, that's an evil motive. So you can go to the council with reasonable suggestion and say, look, this is what we want, right? This is what we expect. Because to get more people into your movement on board, they're going to see that you guys are moderate and you've got a well thought out plan, that you don't want to become communist China, and you'll get their support. Because look, I reckon 95% of Australians would say, oh yeah, I love the cameras because I'm not doing anything wrong. And that's their basis of belief. It's not until they've been boiled in the boiling pot that they realize that it's too late. So we're awake, we know, turn that to your advantage. Get your council put together, the People's Council. Go in and consult with the council and say, look, we're not going to accept anything less than this. We're here, we represent the people, we're telling you what we want. And that's the way you're going to make a change. That's the way. But the ultimate power is with the tribe. Now, I can feel for the Yidinji because they've been a voice in the wilderness. Wait till they're supported by 100 tribal nations across Australia. And we've got the whole of Australia blanketed with tribal nations in 6 months' time, right? They're not going to feel powerless. We're going to be winning because we're going to be winning in the international courts, and we're going to be changing the way the world thinks. So all of a sudden, they can say, this is our land and we're not tolerating it. And we've got a sophisticated government that's ready to take over the functions that you perform, because no one wants chaos. Imagine if the council collapsed tomorrow. No water supply, no rubbish being collected, no one doing road maintenance, no one maintaining the parks, right? Things start to collapse. Imagine if the state government collapsed tomorrow and no one's paying the police. No one's providing all the services. Can you imagine how bad it'd get? So what we want is a transition from an awesome system away from the old system. We want to get this new system to take over the crap system. That's what you want to do, because that's how it becomes seamless. And we can do that in the next 12 months. And we can do that by backing the tribes to do their function. We don't have to join the tribes, but we have to back them. And they have to know they have the support of the community. So you grow that community support, you engage through your People's Council with the crap government council, and you make the change. And that, and all it takes is people.
As you can see in the comments there, Cairns is actually already considered a smart city. And part of the problem that we have with justifying all of the surveillance that we're under is that Cairns is probably the hottest seat, if you will, for crime, like juvenile crime, especially car theft, break-ins, robberies, things like that. There's a group here that addresses that. It's a non-governmental group, but we believe that it's partially manufactured to justify having all the surveillance, and that they know that there is, they know who's committing these crimes, but there's an unwillingness to do anything about it, because then that gives them justification to push their agenda and push that smart city technology and surveillance state on us. So we've been debating our options lately about really what can we do if the council's on the take, if they don't want to have that, you know, the real change from us, but they want to push this agenda of the smart cities.
They don't want the change. I can tell you that 100%, right? Because of the kickbacks from the developers and the boys club and all that sort of stuff. They don't want it, right? They're not going to have a choice under international law. The change is coming whether they like it or not. It's up to the community to make that process as painless as possible. Now, when you look at crime, the government is largely responsible for the crime because they've engineered the breakdown of the family. Mum and dad both have to work. The kids are unsupervised, right? Divorce is like having a lunch at the pub. It's that easy. So there's the family unit gone, right? The domestic violence laws, the police are ill-equipped to deal with domestic violence. There needs to be specialist trained people out there who can help and relieve the situation. We've got poor education. I mean, really poor education. We're interested in teaching kids about transgender, not life skills to cope with life. We don't teach them about outcome. We teach them right and wrong, tick and across, right? Oh, you're a dickhead or you're a genius. That's the sort of scope that we're teaching. And so it's education. But the fundamental biggest two are, one, people see no future, so crime is their only option. Two, the distribution of the wealth, okay? Because the real tax, working class pay in Australia is about 73%. When you add in fuel excise tax, GST, tobacco tax, alcohol tax, stamp duty, rates, payroll tax. Are you seeing that picture?
Yes.
Right. So the tax isn't spent in Australia. It goes offshore. Okay. We've got plenty of money in Australia. We're one of the richest countries in the world. We've got to take back control. And the best way to take back control of everything is through the tribe, because they own the land. Because they own the land, they declare peace. All of a sudden, all the land that's been stolen off them must be returned. It must be returned. And the force of law is there to do that. So there are people really interested on the planet, really powerful people who are interested in seeing this change. And they're there to support these fledgling tribal nations when they need it. So that support's available right now. Part of that's the UN, but part of it's other big countries that want to see this change happen as well. Countries like Russia, believe it or not. Right? Russia is not a communist country. It's a populist nationalist country. And they've been that for 20 years. It's only the media that tell us they're communists. They're not communists. Yeah. So we've got support to do these programs. And we've got to look at the actual cause of the problem, identify that, work out a solution to fix it. Surveillance is not going to fix crime. It's not going to fix it, right? Surveillance won't fix homelessness. It won't fix malnutrition. None of it is. It's just there. But if it's used lawfully to prevent crime in the right situation, I think that's a great tool. Yeah.
Are we going with the Solomon Islands with their beliefs with the Yidinji model?
Yeah, they're like after Christmas, they're all on board. So there's 3 islands coming on board to assert their own sovereignty, because the Solomon Islands is a whole heap of micronations controlled by islands, because every island's got their own king and royal family, and that's well documented and also well supported internationally. So they're gonna all take their become crown sovereign under the Yidinji model, and then form an effective government over the top, because their government is completely corrupt. That's the problem. So they know they need to make a change, and the best way to make a change is go back to how it worked for tens of thousands of years, maybe even 100,000 years. Because when you've got something that works for 100,000 years and falls apart in 100 years, you're doing something wrong.
There's your problem.
Yeah. Is there a question from Lynn?
No, we're just waiting for this group to finish all their questions, and then I was going to come back to Lynn. Lynn's been waiting.
Are you guys good? Yeah. I think we're all good. You've entertained a lot of our questions. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Guys.
And look,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I
stay in
couldn't
touch.
get up there. I've just been under the pump at an imaginable rate, but I really appreciate this opportunity.
No, we appreciate that you've invited us on to Zoom, and we do understand. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again, Lance. Hey?
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Excellent. All right, I will just mute those guys, and we will just see. Move co-host. Let me remove that, and we'll just unmute Lynn. Lynn's been waiting patiently, and we'll just see if what Lynn's question was. Hang on 2 seconds, Lynn, if you're still there. Lynn, can you hear us? Hang on. Ask to unmute. Just wait. Let me see if we can just make her co-host, and then she can come in. Hang on. Lynn, are you there? Don't seem to be able to unmute you, Lynn, so you'll have to see if you can unmute at your end.
She's taking her hand down. So
All right.
okay.
Not to worry.
Thanks
then. All right.
everyone for
We
staying
can
in.
wrap it up. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks everybody for participating in that extra hour of Triple Tap tonight to get all those Q&A answers sorted. Hopefully you guys have benefited from that little extra session as well. And as I said, we'll get the replay put up ASAP. So excellent. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Lance. Guys, have
Thanks,
an amazing
guys.
week. And we'll see you next time on Triple Tap. Bye for now.
All right.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye for now.